transmit their unfavored. To our last posterity, we must preserve with religion good faith that great principle of self-government which guarantees to each and every state, old and new, the right to make just such constitutions as they desire, and come into the Union with their own constitution, and not one palm upon them. Whenever you sanction the doctrine that Congress may crowd a constitution down the throats of unwilling people against their consent, you will subvert the great fundamental principle upon which of our free institutions rest in the future. I have no fear that the attempt will ever be made. President Buchanan declared that his annual message that hereafter the rule adopted the Minnesota case requiring a constitution.
We're in the middle of something, so keep on going, Mr.
Go!
Douglas. No, you can say, keep on going, Mr. Douglas.
I forgot what I said.
Something about
Requiring a constitution to be submitted to the people should be followed in all future cases.
There you go. Thank you. You're welcome. Go on, Mr. Douglas. Hurry, Bertha's about to die.
I'm sorry! Oh God. If he stands by that recommendation, there will be no division in the Democratic Party on that principle in the future. Hence, the great mission of the democracy is to unite the fraternal feeling of the whole country, restore peace and quiet by teaching each state to mind its own business and regulate its own domestic affairs, and all to unite and carry on the Constitution as our fathers made it, and thus preserve the Union, render and perpetual in all time to come. Why should we not act as our fathers who made the government? There was no sectional strife in the Washington's army. They were all brethren as common confederacy. They fought under a common flag that they might bestow upon the posterity of a common destiny. And to this end they poured out their blood in common streams and shared in some instances common grave.
Now, my fellow citizens, I will detain you only a little while longer. I find a report of a speech made by Judge Douglas at Joylet when we last met at Freeport published. I believe in the Missouri Republican on the 9th of this month, in which Judge Douglas says, you know, Ottawa. I read this platform and asked him if he concurred in each and all of the principles set forth in it. He did not answer those questions. At last I said frankly, I wish you would answer them. Because when I get up here and need them, whereas the color of the principles a little bit darker than Egypt, I intend to trot you down to Jonesboro. The very notice I was going to take him down to Egypt made him tremble in the knees, so that he had to be carried to the platform. He laid 7 days, and in the meantime held a construction with his political officials. They had Lovejoy and Friendsworth and all the leaders of the Ballin party. They consulted it all over, and at least Lincoln came to the conclusion that he would answer. So he came up to Freeport last Friday. Now that statement altogether furnishes the subject for this philosophical contemplation. I have been treating it in that way, and I have really come to the conclusion that I can explain it in no other way by believing the judge is crazy. If he was in his right mind, I cannot convince how he would have to risk discussing on the 4,000 or 5,000 of his own friends who stood there and knew as to my having to be carried from the platform. That was not a word of the truth in it.
Didn't they carry you off?
There. That question illustrates the character of this man Douglas exactly. He smiles and says, didn't they carry you off? But then he said he had to be carried off. And he said it to convince you that the country that he had so completely broken me down by his speech that I had to be carried away. Now he seeks to dodge it and ask, didn't they carry you off? Yes, they did. But Judge Douglas, why didn't you tell the truth? I would like to know why you didn't tell the truth about it. And then again, he laid up 7 days. He puts this in print for the people of the country to read as a serious document. I think if he had been in his sober senses, he would not have risked that barefatedness in the presence of thousands of his own friends who knew that I made speeches with 6 of the 7 days of Henry Marshall County, Augusta, Hancock County, and McDonough County, including all the necessary travel to meet him again at Freeport at the end of the 6 days. Now I say there is no charitable way to look at the statement except when not come to Egypt. There's another thing in the statement that alarmed me very gradually as he states it, that he was going to trot me down to Egypt. Thereby he would have to interfere to come down there, and that he himself had been very reluctant to enter the stipulation. More than this, Judge Douglas, when he made that statement, must have been crazy and wholly out of his sober senses, or else he would have known that when he got me down here, that windy promise of his powers to annihilate me wouldn't amount to anything. That's good.
It's good. Over.